I'm Justin Rich, and we are at Burnt Rock Farm in Huntington, Vermont, which is about 15 miles east of Lake Champlain and 25 miles southeast of Burlington. Nestled in the foothills of the Green Mountains. So I got mountains to three sides of us. And we farm along 6 miles of the river valley, which is how far you have to go to chase small fields in these tight valleys. Welcome to our farm.
I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain, and I take you behind the scenes with growers who share their strategy for achieving the triple bottom line of sustainability. These interviews unravel how they're building their business to balance success across people, profits, and our planet. Today's episode comes to you from Huntington, Vermont, where we visit with Justin Rich of Burnt Rock Farm. This farm visit starts off quickly, literally. Most of the fields at the home farm are in cover crop this season, so we jumped in the side-by-side for a stretched-out field tour. After seeing fields of storage crops, including onions, potatoes, and sweet corn, we hop out of the truck and step into the barn, where I asked Justin how he got into farming, what fulfills him in this career, and some advice he'd give to those just starting out. He describes how he's structured the business to his personality and to align with the goals of the farm. And then we wrap the episode with a walk past some field equipment and get a tour of the greenhouses that are all part of wholesaling over 30 acres of vegetables. And this is the farmer's share.
So the home farm here is 17 acres, of which only, if we cropped all the cropping ground, it'd be like 4.5 acres. So it's really, most of our production is elsewhere. So we have all of our wash pack facility, all our greenhouses, store much of our equipment here, not all. And then we have a property up the road with another barn that gets anything that we can put in there on pallets, we do. But most of our production is not here, especially this year. This year we're growing about 25 acres of actual vegetables, another 10 in cover crop, full season cover crops, and it's a little under 20,000 square feet of greenhouse space. But we don't do nearly as good a job as a lot of other folks do with their tunnels, because it's actually a pretty small part of our business. So they have to complement the field crops like the potatoes and squash and onions. It's kind of where we focus our attention. The greenhouses fill in the production gaps. So we got quite a bit of frontage down here along the Huntington River. And all these fields were in potatoes last year, so I thought that was a good opportunity to take them out of production and put them in some soil building cover crops for the summer. So here we've got a field of buckwheat, Japanese millet, some oats, a teeny bit of peas, and then undersown with some red clover. Yeah, so we have a bunch of different little kind of equipment yards full of stuff that mostly gets used, some of it doesn't get used as much. But yeah, that's
a big rig.
Yeah, that's our Grimmy one-row bunker potato harvester, which we bought 2 winters ago, and it's amazing. So that right there saves about, I think we calculated last year, about 200 person hours of labor during potato harvest, which is kind of important because that's a pretty busy time of the year for lots of things. Like if somebody said, I have this device that can save you 200 hours of labor in February, I'd say, what does it cost? Maybe. But if I can do anything that'll save 200 hours in September, it's so valuable, because that's when there's just such a production crunch on a farm like ours, because we're still bringing in sweet potatoes. We're bringing sweet potatoes, winter squash, and harvesting tomatoes and spinach and
it's go time.
It's go time 100%. Like right now, I like to remind people, there's a gear above where we're working right now. So
yeah.
And 2 years ago, we realized we throw out a lot of cull vegetables, and so we started saying, let's do as good a job as we can of actually composting this stuff into a usable product.
Yeah.
So right to our left is our current compost pile, and it's probably 70% wood chips by volume. To the right is last year's pile that's finishing.
It's looking good.
Yeah, and then down below here we have 2 years ago's pile, which I will spread at some point this summer down there. So it gets much more, it starts looking like potting soil by this time. I got a nutritional analysis done on it. It's nothing to write home about, but It's actually good. It's not loaded with phosphorus. It's got a little bit of nitrogen, a little bit of phosphorus, and a little bit of potassium. So it's just a lot of carbon and micronutrients, and we can get wood chips here. So it's a way to turn wood chips into a spreadable, usable product.
Yeah.
So we farm with more topography than most, I think. We're allowing all these cane terraces along the Huntington River. So this is a field we rent from our neighbors who have a vineyard on the slopey ground above their flat fields. But in Vermont especially, you don't want vineyards on flat ground in a mountain valley. So you'll get all sorts of cold air pooling and
Yep.
late frost in the spring, early frost in the fall. But it works out well for us because they don't want the flat ground and I don't want the hilly ground. So, so our business is mostly winter. Well, it's largely winter storage crops. We grow summer stuff too, but a lot of our markets were built on these storage crops, so we still focus on those. So we're trying to grow things in, multiple acre blocks for the most part. So there's like 2.5 acres of onions, which, we kind of exist in this at times awkward middle scale, but it works really well when servicing local direct wholesale accounts. So selling to the stores in Chittenden and Addison County, but we ship a little bit of stuff through Deep Root, but it's not a huge part of our business. But right now we're on a cane terrace, so that's got cliffs on 3 sides. It's basically like a lobe of gravel sticking out into the valley. So there's cliffs everywhere. Not like majestic western cliffs. They're eroded, tree-covered eastern cliffs.
Yeah.
We used to crop this little half acre here, but it's kind of awkward shaped
Yeah.
and really bony. So whenever we put something down here, it never quite did as well. So we might let that one revert to clover. Yeah, we have a nice rock picker, which is very useful in fields like this. So you can see looking down these wheel tracks, I'm actually excited to run the rock picker through this whole field this August, because onions are a great crop ahead of the rock picker. We get to double crop this field, onions in the spring, and then we pull a bumper crop of rocks out in August or September. But it's really handy. Rocks are expensive. So like that culvert we just drove across when we came in the field, that blew out during the Halloween flood 2 years ago.
Yep.
And what did I get? Probably a tandem dump truck load of fill from the town, from ditches, and then probably 20 plus yards of our own mined rock out of this field.
Yeah.
So rather than have it be $4,000 to fix a culvert, it was free, which is nice. So that's our onions. Our potatoes are about 5 miles north of here. If you want me to take a ride up there. On the radar they said there today, a lot of Vermont is experiencing mild dryness. I'm like, that's not even really a term, I don't think. Like, everything is green.
It's a Vermont dry.
Yeah. Yeah. Only 5 inches of rain a month here when it's Vermont dry.
You can access the somewhat damp fields.
Yeah, I haven't been swamped out all year, which is nice, but we've been getting the amount of rain that the weather maps say we are supposed to normally get, but we usually get 50% more than that. Being in a valley on the western slopes of the greens, we catch a lot of the rain as it slows down overhead. So Charlotte might get a ½ inch, we'll get 1 inch. Hey Dan, which is often not nice, but sometimes it is nice.
Yeah.
Like this year, we actually had a thunderstorm the other day. I said, wow, an actual thunderstorm.
They're so rare now.
Like this year, we've had a couple of nice slow soakers and
Yeah, we have.
one thunderstorm knock on thermoplastic. Because the most damaging thing for us economically is a super wet June, because it just leaches out so much nutrition from the soil, sets the plants back, makes their roots grow shallow, and then it always dries up at some point.
Yeah.
And they have shallow root systems and there's not as many nutrients. I mean, you can imagine, that'll cut 30-40% off our potato yields. The plasticulture crops seem to do fine with it, kind of no matter what the temperature is.
Yeah.
They shed the water during heavy rains, and we irrigate easily when it's hot and dry. So those are kind of like plasticulture is crop insurance for us.
It's pretty much like the majority of things are in plastic.
We got about 9 acres in plasticulture right now, and 16 bare, so
Okay.
slightly more favorable.
Yeah.
Now we hop from the side-by-side into the truck to check out some fields further up the valley.
This truck used to be our nice truck, and now it's just kind of another rusty truck with weird problems. But I've been saying for 2.5 years now, trucks have gotten too expensive. I'm not going to buy a new truck, and then it hasn't gotten better. But a constant dilemma for me is we need 7 working pickup trucks on this farm, and a bunch of them don't even get 1,000 miles a year. This one might get 7. So you can't justify buying anything new because in 12 years they'll be rotted out anyway and it'll have 80,000 miles on it. Yeah. And it used to be you could get a truck with 120,000 miles on it that was 4 years old for a third the price of new. Now they want 2/3 the price of new. So
Right.
So the spread has gotten bad. But that'll correct itself. So we have one field that was a mile south where we just were that is just in cover crops this year again. So it's, as much as I like looking at cover crops, it doesn't make the greatest podcast material. So we're spread out over 6 miles of the valley with about 35, if we planted every inch of our arable ground, it'd be about 35 acres. But that takes about 50 acres of support land just between headlands and
Right.
perimeters. Unlike in field crops, we don't plant the whole field and then plant the headlands. The headlands stay permanently grassed for us. So we're pulling into a 9.5 acre field, but again, it's an 18 acre field on the maps. But we get 9.5 acres of vegetables out of it. And it's our biggest field, and this is where we have our sweet potatoes and all of our brassicas this year, as well as our baby spinach production. And this year we actually have had some deer pressure in here, so we might need to do something about that. And these sweet potatoes have definitely suffered from the cool days and cool nights that we've had this year.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been living on the coast of Maine all summer, which is very comfortable. It's very pleasant weather to work in, but certain crops like it, and other crops like the sweet potatoes are saying, I prefer North Carolina weather.
Yeah.
These nights in the 40s are definitely outside of my comfort range. Like last night it was 49 here.
In July.
Yeah, in July, mid-July.
Yeah, very comfortable.
It was awesome. For me.
Not the plants.
No, I always take solace in knowing that if I'm uncomfortable sleeping at night, the sweet potatoes are happy.
It's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I'm sweaty, but at least it's better for the business. So it's nice. All these fields are down along the river, so we can always, unlike if we had one big 50-acre field, it'd be a lot easier to have irrigation, but it's not that bad to irrigate, at least because all these fields are along the river, so we can drop in suction lines wherever we need to. And this was last year's sweet potatoes, so that's got oats and red clover that's coming up underneath. And that will probably go to potatoes next year, I believe is the rotation.
So you must put just about as many miles on the tractors as you do the trucks going 6 miles up and down the valley.
Put a lot of miles on the tractors, yeah. Not bad though, it's only our furthest field is 5 miles from the home farm, and you can get there in 13 minutes if you have, I guess what used to be called like a European road gear, but now more and more of them are coming with that 24 mile per hour road gear.
Yeah.
We used to have a little Case 265 cultivating tractor, which was great for what it did, but I think its top speed was 11 miles an hour.
Takes you twice
And it
as
only
long
weighs
to get
1,800 pounds, so you're driving it on the road for 5 miles, and there's people texting, there's people drunk, there's people just bad at driving, there's people who are just too busy sightseeing, and if you got hit from behind by a guy driving a pickup truck, you're got a roll cage and a seatbelt, but so all of our tractors now are heavier than pickup trucks, which is
safety feature.
Well, it's they come with the faster gears.
Yeah.
And they can do other things. And it's nice to be like, send one of the crew up the road. I don't have to worry about whether they're going to get clipped by somebody. Like, I know multiple people who've been hit by cars while driving a tractor.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the logic why people drive Hummers, right? Like, I want to be the guy who survives a car accident. It's kind of a bankrupt logic eventually, but I think it makes some sense on tractors.
Yeah. Yep.
And people, the last 2 years has seen an intense increase in bad, aggressive car-tractor interactions. You know, we're pulling into the home farm from the south. We have to take a left across the other lane. And I've been buzzed while turning left with my blinkers on in a well-lit tractor with working blinkers. I've been buzzed 5 times on the left while turning left.
Jeez.
And I'm in a tractor that weighs twice what that car weighs.
Yeah.
So these people are just being dumb?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only way to
Impatient.
put it, really. It's just wicked dangerous. But we're not as diverse as a lot of farms, too. So we don't have, like 3 cultivating tractors set up with, for 3-row bed top greens and 5-row greens and, 1-row crop. We do everything is either plastic culture or 2-row in the field. So we can use the same equipment to cultivate potatoes as we do corn and brassicas. And, usually I can go out on a Sunday and cultivate all the plastic culture in an afternoon, or I can go out and cultivate all the 2-row crops in an afternoon. So it's nowhere near as much equipment changeover as a lot of folks. I know a lot of people have like fleets of Farmall A's and 140s, but we don't. I mean, I've worked on farms before that all I did was drive a cultivating tractor for 3 months in the summer. So on the left coming up is a 4.5 acre rented field of winter squash that just came into production this year. We've been renting it for the last 2 years while it waited organic certification. But it's growing a really nice crop out there. Very nice dark green. Ross just mowed all the perimeters, so it looks well kept.
When I drove by that coming in, I was like, wow, that is a good looking stand.
Yeah, we transplanted out we transplanted squash, and we set it out about 5 days earlier than normal. So the plants were really stocky and you could barely pull them. And they really appreciated being at that younger stage of growth. Because the bigger problem for us around that late May, early June window is you might get a night where it's 44 degrees and windy, and that's just murder on a young cucurbit transplant. And we don't remay any of those. So it was really valuable to be able to put short, stocky plants in, and then the weather was just perfect. So all the buttons were pressed, all the buttons were pushed on the squash this year. And while yes, it is not always the most economical thing to be driving 3-4 miles to get to a field, a lot of the rotational benefits are quite huge. Like, we just do not see certain insect diseases build up. I take great pride in somebody saying, oh, do you ever have a problem with this? I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I've never seen that before. And it's not that we're doing anything. We're in an isolated valley. The nearest vegetable farm is probably Lewis Creek Farm, which is 5 miles to the west and over some 2,400-foot mountains.
Yeah.
And to the south, where a lot of the insects fly in from, like potato leafhoppers, there's no farms for, 20 miles?
Yeah.
And there's mountains, so we're protected a little bit there. The leafhoppers always end up showing up, but we don't get that June 18th pressure that some folks might get.
Do you have a standard rotation, or is it always evolving?
It's always evolving as more land comes in and out.
Yeah.
I try to not put ground and early crops multiple years in a row, because that's just how you get certain weed problems. But even that's all manageable. So that's not a deal killer. But if I, as a tiebreaker, I'll say, well, we had onions there last year, so let's put late brassicas there. But the only problem is the onions come out early in the summer, so we can get a nice, big, lush oat and pea winter killed cover crop in. So then it's a good field to put spring crops in next year, because it has a winter killed cover crop in there. So Ross is up here at the general store getting irrigation gas, which in a dry year it's definitely not zero on the budget, but figure every dollar you spend on gasoline returns $50 worth of crops, so don't really complain.
Yeah, worth it.
So this is a rented field 5 miles north of the home farm, again along the river. And this is in Huntington Village, so it's, there's houses everywhere. This field is basically like a park for people. They just walk their dogs, and sometimes they play frisbee through it, which I have to have words about when that happens.
Just because they're trampling through.
Yeah, I found it dangerous to get between people and their recreational pursuits, but and sometimes it needs to be done. So in this field, in order to keep the dogs out, you can see we have potatoes there, and then I have 2 passes of the grain drill of oats and peas.
A buffer from the people.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's a buffer. I mean, it's good for the soil health too. But and the big thing we did this year, production change-wise, is we laid drip tape in all the potatoes, which so far I'm very pleased with. So you can see there's another oat pea dog barrier
Yeah.
on the riverside of those russets. But so the potatoes got rotated 5 miles from last year, and I have not sprayed for potato beetles yet.
Whoa.
And there are some out there. They're definitely there, but they just have not reached anything, approaching an economical threshold.
That was a deep meadow, and he was considering not growing potatoes next year.
Because he's got one farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, potato beetles are super lazy, and they can eat a lot of different stuff. So if you grow potatoes in one spot, they're like, sweet, I'm just going to eat that again.
Yeah.
So we've got, this is a little over 5 acres total in 3 blocks. Very pleased with how this drip worked. We rigged up our hiller to have a drip dispenser on it. But we laid the drip, about 4 inches inside. So we laid it at hilling. So we were able to tine weed the field pre-emergence. And then at first hilling, we laid drip, and it took a little bit of adjusting, but worked pretty well. But now we can come out and just water this field for, give them the equivalent of a 1/2 inch of water twice a week to supplement whatever falls from the sky. And this year it's been pretty nice. We've gotten some rain, but not crazy.
Yeah. Do you measure and irrigate based on, you got a 1/4 inch of rain, so you're going to supplement X number of hours, or do you just kind of...
We basically have a rotate. We just Tuesdays and Fridays now, we run the pump for 5 hours.
Okay.
And this is low flow, 0.22 GPM per 100 foot drip tape. So it's not putting out much water. So we let it run for a couple hours. And if we have heavy rain on Monday, we won't irrigate on Tuesday. But it's like the plan is to irrigate, and then we back off if it rains a lot. But it's going to be perfect. We'll go into this nice, hot, dry weekend with, fresh moisture in the soil. Because for us, since we're in a potato rotation, we can't, adjust the pH to be below 6 for scab control. So our biggest tool for scab management is resistant varieties, and then just maintaining good soil moisture. Sometimes easier said than done, especially in the sandier parts of the fields. But I've been very happy with. It's definitely a bunch more work. This is $1,500 worth of drip tape for 5 acres, so it's not nothing. But potatoes are the most management sensitive crop we grow, which if you're a farmer who possesses any excess of pride can be very great, and it can be very demoralizing. I always say I can try to manage the heck out of onions, and they're just going to yield what they want to yield. Same with winter squash. It's more weather dependent, but with potatoes, managing the fertility and controlling diseases and controlling soil moisture and dealing with insects is, the farmer has a lot of input. A lot of times you can go to a farm, let's say July 30th in Vermont, and all their potatoes are sticks. Mm-hmm. And they got 10,000 pounds per acre maybe yield. But, it's low input, low output. We try to do our potatoes as high input, high output. If we have, if we get a 35,000 pound per acre crop, which, would be a crop failure in Idaho, but that's pretty darn good for rain-fed northeastern organic potato production. I'll take it. That means we have 150,000 pounds of potatoes in the barn to wash all winter, which keeps our crew going.
Right.
And it makes me have to borrow less money the next year to get things going in the spring. But these are Satina gold potato, which is kind of our most reliable potato. It just seems to like growing here. It's delicious, looks great. Gold potatoes are our best sellers. You can see my drive lane for spraying. You kind of mangle the potatoes there, but they yield better than a pure drive lane would.
Yeah, that's minor.
Yeah, a couple years I did put in drive lanes. I'm like, why am I wasting land on a drive lane? We have one tractor with ginseng shields for the tires, but we actually don't spray with that tractor. But that was really handy when we did. It parted them very nicely. So that right there is the same variety as this here. I don't know about you, but don't these look a little more robust?
Just a bit bushier.
Yeah. I think they were planted the same day. These fields both had squash last year. The year before they had red clover. The year before that, this one was onions, and that was in rye. But I can't imagine that would have an effect 3-4 years later. So I don't know.
Right?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's usually our best yielding block in this field. So this is the 2.5 acre field here of all the random varieties. Like we grow mostly golds, russets, and reds, and they're mostly over there. But then, our secondary golds, our secondary reds, our fingerlings, our Adirondack reds, the purple potatoes are all over here in this block. Yeah, we do a fair amount of red clover as a cover crop, so if we have land open this time of year, we will drill red clover in with oats, mow the oats off in 6 weeks, then let the red clover grow all fall, and then next year, and then kill it the following spring. Because I love cover cropping. It's like probably my favorite thing to do on the farm. You just get so much done in such a short period of time when you're drilling covers. And it's so satisfying. You don't have to do anything to that field for X period of time now. We can spend quite a bit of money on cover crop seed and diesel to till it all in. So incorporating some longer cover crops like red clover has been pretty handy. So you just have to mow it, twice a year in its main growing year. And red clover leaves the soil so mellow the next spring. You can just use a high-speed disc or a shallow tillage pass. You can kill it pretty easily. So we try to use the moldboard plow for the most part if we have winter rye in the spring, just because you actually get a kill.
Yeah, right.
So that's that field. We drove by the sweet corn field. I forgot to pull in there, so we can hit that on the way back.
Sure. What's your favorite crop to grow?
Potatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just they respond. Like the more work I put into potatoes, the better they do. And that just, I try to take a lot of pride in my work, and so that kind of helps.
Yeah. How many employees do you keep on?
Me plus 7 right now. But, we have 7 people who work, 8 to 4 jobs. It's not 12-hour days.
Well, that's good.
No, I know, but a lot of times people say, well, you have that many employees on that many acres. Like, yes, but our guys work 30% fewer hours than your H2A workers who are putting in 75-hour weeks. It's just a different, a lot of those guys are here to earn as much money as quickly as possible.
Right. They're trying to.
They want the hours. What are they going to do? Watch TV otherwise?
If they're here, they might as well work.
Yeah. So it's just a different model entirely.
So do you have locals or H2A
It's
crews?
all local workers.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people been with us for a number of years.
How many do you keep throughout the winter?
4.
Yeah.
And we cut it down to 4 days a week in the winter. It just gives people a little bit of time to relax, go on vacation. So you 4 people 4 days a week, but somebody's almost always on vacation.
Yeah.
So it's probably not even 3 full-time equivalents on payroll during the wintertime.
And a still, pretty full work day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, storage crops are nice because, you're never like, oh my God, this is going by. Let's. The other day we just had this emergency cauliflower harvest. Like, what? The cauliflower's ready? I swear, we're out there 2 days earlier, like, oh, it's not ready yet. And all of a sudden, we brought in 300 pounds of cauliflower. And
You turned around. And
having to hustle stuff. I like, getting an email from somebody saying, hey, would it be possible to get 2,000 pounds of gold potatoes next Tuesday? I'm like, yep. Yes, we have that. I have a sheet on my corkboard of what the inventory is all winter long, and it's nice to be able to say yes.
What's your sweet corn acreage?
About 4.
Yeah.
We did 4 successions of, about an acre. We mapped out probably a little under 4 acres just because of transplant loss.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have a nice enough seeder to.
Yeah, so that's transplanted.
Yeah, the only thing we would see would be corn. I'm not going to spend $6,000 outfitting a 2-row max emerge planter to do a good job. So we just transplant. It works well. A lot of folks even transplant their first 1 or 2 plantings anyway.
Right, to give it that extra jump.
Yeah. We should re-May the first planting, but we just mid-May is kind of busy, so
When do you typically start harvesting that?
We'll go set. Probably 2 weeks. Everything, all those heat-loving crops are a little slower this year.
1st August then.
Yeah, last year I think we were harvesting around like the 24th of July, but I highly doubt we're going to be there. You know, the first variety we plant is this variety Sweetness, which, you know, tassels at about like butt height. You know, it's, yeah, they make these nice little ears, but they're fast. They taste good, but they're just kind of funny looking.
The ones to kick the season off.
Yes. And we can only do that with the first planting. Yeah. And maybe we shouldn't even do it because getting them ripe 3 days earlier, it's not like we run a farm stand. You know,
right.
Go
So
to the farmer's market where like that can really matter. If you're first at farmer's market and can sell, 2,000 ears at $1 each instead of 75 cents each, that really makes a difference. But being in direct wholesale like we mostly are, that extreme incentive for the tail end of the earliness bell curve is not there. Which is nice, because I feel like that's the most stressful stuff to deal with, is trying to push stuff into not natural, but higher management parts of the growing season.
It's a good way to word it.
Yeah. But again, if you have a farm stand or a farmer's market where you can sell an extra $2,000 of stuff, like that's different.
Yeah.
That's different.
How do you harvest the corn?
With our hands.
Hands into baskets, or
we drag
gators or
pickle barrels, big barrels that you drag.
Yeah.
Or some people just carry a sack and pick right into the sack.
Yeah.
And then we have a drive lane every 20 rows of corn.
Okay.
And then in the drive lane will be a big hay wagon. So people will just throw their sacks on the hay wagon, which is being pulled by a tractor. So that just creeps through the fields.
Yeah.
To keep up with people. But corn is fun to harvest. It's so different from everything else. It's not even 30 man hours to harvest an acre of corn. It's compared to everything else, which is hundreds. So you can see all this was set out probably almost 3 weeks ago at this point, and purple leaves. It's just been so cool.
Yeah.
Everything's grown out of some varieties are worse than others.
What varieties of corn you got?
These last 4 successions are all Allure, Montauk, and Latte, I believe.
Yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah, and then the first one, it's Allure and Sweetness.
Yeah.
Which, is tasseling at belt height. But we backed off the nitrogen quite a bit this year. This only got 80 pounds of nitrogen in chicken poop, and I'm pretty pleased with the color on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to see, some of these, putting more legumes in the cover crop rotation, what we'd get out of that. And I don't know, at first glance, I don't think these look chlorotic.
No, looking good.
I was a little nervous earlier on in the season just because it was so cool, for nitrogen mineralization. So this field had brassicas in it last year, and some of the brassicas had April 6th this year, I came out and drilled about half this field to peas. So the later successions all came in after disking in either a knee-high or waist-high pea crop. So you should have gotten, 80, 90 pounds of nitrogen just from that. But we'll see.
You do everything organically?
Yes. Yeah, everything's organic. Even this gallon soga. So it's all cultivated.
You must have high tractors to get into the...
Yeah, we have 2 mudders that have 27-inch belly clearance.
Yeah.
So this stuff all got cultivated, I think, a week and a half ago, before the tassels really elongated. But we'll probably do the 3rd and 4th planting once more. But this is Sweetness, who is super annoying and low. It's funny when a plant's only this tall, how does it even generate enough? You're well, that's why the ears are this big.
Yeah, they're half size compared to the Montauk's later on in the season.
I know. It makes you wonder, why even bother? Why don't we just skip that first week? But
it's the warm-up. It gets people excited.
Yeah, exactly. And we can sell every ear of sweet corn we pick, so it's... And for us, I don't want to push the season into September. I want it pretty much to be late July through August and then be done. Because once September 1st hits, there's way too many competing demands on our time.
Right.
And I think what also helps us a little bit is we transplant, and I think it was it 16 or 18 inch spacing? So we're giving each plant a fairly large amount of space.
Yeah, you are.
Uh-oh.
Oh!
Raccoons usually are more savvy than that.
They're like, nope, 2 weeks.
I don't know, Kevin. Maybe a week and a half.
Gotta
Well,
beat the
looks like
farmer.
we're going to fence this week or next week.
You run electric around here
It works alarmingly well, just like 2 strands.
just to keep the coons out?
And it works. You know, we've dealt with them with harsher methods before, but like in a remote field,
Yeah.
you have to do it at night, and it's less work to just put up a fence than just like trap them, dispose of them during the day. And I don't know, you usually have like 6 to 12 of them at a time.
Yeah.
So you can't trap them all at once, so it's just keep them all out at once. So we'll come through, maybe this afternoon. You just do a perimeter mow, perimeter cultivation, set the fence, and then should be good to go. Then over here, I think this is Montauk. Here, just look how much,
Yeah,
that's a real corn plant now,
right.
especially.
The big leaves.
And also this is where, it was right on the edge of this variety was where we did get in here and disked in all the fall brassicas and seeded peas. And they got, this tall before disking them in. And then that should be 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen right there on top of the 80 pounds we put down. So that should be enough to grow a good corn crop. And I think from a nitrogen management standpoint, I think these look good.
Yeah, and they're at the point like they're good, like they're established. They're,
Yeah.
that they can take it the rest of the way.
It only gets easier from here out, It's not like they have shallow root systems. We've had really nice rain this year, so like their roots should be perfectly developed. They can handle it if it's dry from here on out. But I've been really impressed with, we're trying to grow more peas as a cover crop just because they're relatively inexpensive. And just the root nodulation you can get on just a forage pea in 6 weeks is pretty amazing. So, I mean, if you've got that big root nodule in there, it's giving you nitrogen. It's not just eating the nitrogen that's already in the soil.
Right.
It's fixing new stuff. So that's all the production fields, Andy.
Cool.
Pretty boring. Like 80% of the acreage is in like 4 crops.
It's enough to keep you busy.
Yeah, well, I like to think that our model makes it so I'm just not super stressed out in the summer. I mean, just dealing with stuff is stressful. But imagine if you had to deal with stuff cropping up while you didn't have time to deal with it because you were just...
It just eats away at you.
Yeah, you just have too much. So we were never really off here, but
Right.
we're never doing that packing CSA shares till 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night thing that... I don't know, maybe that's not as common as it used to be, but...
Or packing van to head to market.
Yeah, leaving at 3 a.m. to drive 2 hours to the market and make all your money in 4 months. I mean, some people love it because then they can just have the winter off or do something else in the wintertime. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, you're much more steady year round.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got 2 young kids and try to be present in the lives of my family. And as it is, there's plenty of times where dinner's being made and I'm still out on a tractor at 8 o'clock and that happens, but it's not built in as a guaranteed 7-day-a-week thing.
Are the kids involved with the farm much?
They're 6 and 9, so not super.
Not a ton.
No. I mean, they appreciate it. They go out to the greenhouse and pick tomatoes and stuff.
Yeah.
And my daughter especially just sees the beauty in a lot of the crops. And so you ask her what her favorite vegetable is, and she says cabbage. And I'm pretty sure it's just because it's, that blue-green.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah. She does eat it, but it's not like... I've often wondered what the best way to integrate the kids into the farm is because we're very mechanized, so it's not safe for little kids. In the wash house there's conveyor belts and rollers. It's not childproof.
Right.
We don't have chores like collecting eggs from 20 chickens.
Yeah.
There's stuff that homesteady things that kids could do, but a lot of modern farming is really not that appropriate for untrained people, even adults, to be around.
Yeah. So how'd you get started in farming?
I grew up in a pretty agricultural area in the Hudson Valley and did not farm as a kid. We're a generation removed from dairy farming on my father's side, but so he grew up going to his father's dairy farm as a kid, but there was none of that in my life growing up. And when I was in college, I worked in like bike and ski shops selling and tuning bikes and skis, which was fine. But I wanted to do something else between my junior and senior year, and there was a pretty well established vegetable farm there are a number of them just up the road from where I grew up. But I got a job working at Roxbury Farm, which had been in that area just for a couple of years at that point. They'd moved from another town, I think 2 years before that. So I lived at my parents' house that summer and worked at Roxbury 5.5 days a week. And I often say it as like when you're like a 6 foot, 180 pound, like 20-year-old kid on a farm, like they know what to do with you. I'm real proud. I wouldn't say I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, right.
So we just had an irrigation main break. It's 6 feet down, and it seems easier to have you dig it out rather than go rent an excavator.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do that.
Just get it done.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I often sum up that summer saying, like, during much of the summer, I couldn't wait for it to be over.
Yeah.
But then by the time it was done, I developed so much just like satisfaction from the work that I was compelled to go back and do it again. So it was like the opposite of, dessert tastes good, but you feel bad afterwards if you eat too much.
Yeah.
Like farming doesn't taste good in the moment sometimes, but at the end of the day, you feel very satisfied. And I still hold that that's true. So I worked there for 4 years. And then I went to graduate school for soil science for 2.5 years. And I met my wife there. And she's from Richmond.
Ah.
And here we are. She works in textile manufacturing, so she's not involved with the day-to-day on the farm, but provides a very important farm service, which is a paycheck that has nothing to do with how much it does or does not rain. But she's always been amazingly supportive, so.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
Not that I get asked for advice very often, but like one piece of advice I will give a young farmer if they ask is like, don't try to do it with your partner, unless you've got a couple $100,000 to burn, because it's expensive to get started. It's a capital-intensive business. Like, I love seeing my wife at the end of the day. We're not sniping at each other all day.
Right.
And she doesn't want to farm, so it makes it easy. We each have our own spheres.
Did she, was she more involved at the start or not really?
I mean, in the early years, like especially before we had kids, she definitely helped harvest things now and then. But it's not like we were trying. I think I did an okay job of like matching what I could more or less take care of myself with how much time I had.
Right.
But when you don't have kids, like you got a lot of time, so like I'd go work 50, 60 hour weeks at another farm, then come and do nighttime farming here. That's something you can do in your 20s and 30s. I wouldn't do it now.
Yeah.
Barely out of my 30s. What do you want to see now? We can go in the barn?
Yeah, let's see
wash
pack.
Yeah, so our wash pack setup is for like potatoes and sweet potatoes, and then we just like throw some tubs in to wash kale. So we're pretty basic in here, especially this time of year. A lot of other folks are very specific about their greens and their bubblers, but
yeah,
we just don't do.
That is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, we're doing less of that every year, actually.
Yeah.
I think greens are one of those things that it's easy to get into and scale up as you go, but I don't know. I think we grow up very nice baby spinach, but there's a lot of farms who do a really good job of marketing it and merchandising it with like cute bags, and my eyes roll back when I have to.
It's a
think
whole
about
other
doing
thing.
that. Yeah, we've always, we do like 20 to 30 grand worth of baby spinach a year, and we're doing less of it every year.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a nothing crop for us, but in the grand scheme of things on the picture, it's single-digit percentages.
Right.
And if we don't have a lot of labor, it's one of the more labor-intensive ones. So it just seems to be falling off. We don't even offer it for wholesale to the stores anymore.
Yeah.
Because for us, 4 stores each ordering, we'll take 1 case of 5-ounce bags of spinach, and then we have to go out and harvest 11 pounds of spinach, or whatever that comes out to. And it's like, I don't really want to do that. Because the spinach might be 3 miles up the road.
Right. To go get a crate.
Yeah. But you know, during the pandemic year, like spinach, we harvested so much spinach that year. But last year, you know, it dropped back down a little bit, and then this year, yeah, like I said, we just scaled it back. We took it off. We only sell it in bulk now. We sell it to our summer CSA, and then in bulk to a couple of restaurant and farm stand clients.
Have a CSA, or you're part of?
We have a multi-farm CSA in the summertime. And so for Burnt Rock Farm, that's basically a wholesale account. It's a wholesale account that's owned by me. It's like I'm the buyer, but it's a transaction that way where like Burnt Rock Farm will sell the product to Muddy Boots CSA, who then pays an invoice. And the other farms who are involved, it's the same way.
How many farms are in that?
It's 3 of us at this point. Now it's us, Trillium Hill Farm in Heinsberg, and Tamarack Hollow.
Oh, yeah.
And then Cloudwater Farm over in Warren is involved on a few perennial crops. And the one pickup is at their farm. So stuff goes down to Boston, and then it goes over to Warren. So we've been doing that 10 years now. It's worked great.
Wow.
There's been a lot of change in that. It was originally us, Kingsbury Market Garden in Warren, and Woods Market Garden in Brandon. You know, John passed away from cancer last summer, so he's not involved. And then Aaron stopped vegetable farming over at Kingsbury, doing just herbs. So it's changed a bit.
Yeah.
So that's why we started growing sweet corn, is because John wasn't able to do it.
Right.
And turns out it's fun and it works well in our systems. You know, it's nice to have. We grow a lot of crops in like 3 to 5 acre block range. So like corn slots in nicely as a 4 acre block with the 5 acres of potatoes, 5 acres of winter squash, 2.5 of sweet potatoes, 2.5 of onions.
You've got enough.
3 of brassicas. Yeah, it's. I think we're kind of nearing our max on potatoes and squash, just from a rotation standpoint. So I think as it is right now, we're a pretty tight 5-year rotation on potatoes, sometimes 4. And I really don't want to be doing 4 long term. I think I'd rather be 5, but we need a little bit more land to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm not hunting aggressively for more land, but it could be put to use.
Is there much more in this valley that you could absorb?
No, I mean, between
Seemed
us,
like there's a couple other farms on your.
the
on
one
strip.
dairy farm in town, all the field corn and the well-managed hay was theirs. And there's still a couple guys, you know, mowing 10, 20 acres of hay for, you know, the horse market.
Yeah.
But in terms of acres, that's it. So probably our biggest competition is with house lots now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Luckily, a lot of the good farmland is technically floodplain here, so you probably can't build a house there, but there's a lot of houses that flood here every time it floods. So they have to make the rules a lot more restrictive than they were in the 70s.
Right.
Which I think has been done. But it just puts us in a position where we just want to do what we're doing better, higher yields, you know, lower input. You know, there's plenty of ways to like increase your revenue without adding more land.
Right. So is your plan to maintain kind of where you're at as far as revenue, or do you want to continue to grow that and keep refining things down?
Well, I think all else being equal, there's no reason to not try to make more money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So not like trying to stay at the same dollar value year over year, because especially the last 2 years, like you would have been behind 10% if you did that.
Exactly.
It was actually really funny to farm like in the, you know, what's quote unquote the low interest 2010s. Because on our end, we saw plenty of low inflation 2010s, because we saw plenty of inflation in the 2010s. Like the cost of land kept going up, the cost of machinery kept going up. But I think a lot of that was masked by low inflation in consumer goods. It's like big screen TVs and sneakers didn't get more expensive, but anything made out of steel got a lot more expensive between 2010 and 2020. And that's only kept going. So I'm grateful we did a lot of our capitalization before now, because I feel bad for anybody who's like, I got a cool $1 million to spend on equipment right now. And they realize, oh, I'm only getting $500,000 worth of equipment based on my crop budget from 2 years ago. So times are pretty good in agriculture right now, but high input prices and high equipment prices should give everybody a little bit of pause. But at least in vegetable production in Vermont, it's more labor's the big expense for everybody.
How and you manage labor by scaling up in equipment. How you're a pretty young farmer. How did you get to be a 50-acre farm wholesaling stuff with that much capital?
Well, I told you my wife works off farm. So for the first couple years we were here, I worked full-time off farm. So everything made on the farm stayed on the farm.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to look at our taxes, but I would say even like after like the third year when I was farming here full-time, I contributed very little money to the household. A lot of, my wife and I, we didn't have kids at the time, so we could live more cheaply. So she had a regular day job, and that was super important. I mean, it enabled me to spend more money on investing in things than people in a different situation, like if they were single or if they already had kids, or if their partner, if they wanted to farm together. There's lots of ways it could go. It could be harder. So we had some savings coming into it all. We bought the property in foreclosure auction in 2008, which was quite fortunate. So within a year of that, we had 6 figures of equity in the house. Yeah. So the first barns we built were with a home equity loan based on the fact that we bought our house at the bottom of the market and it inflated. So it's we're still paying off a home equity loan there, but actually that will be done in a year. Woohoo! That'll be a nice $983.44 a month I get to keep.
There's a nice
That's
raise.
a real marker, paying off a loan.
Big one.
And back then I did a lot of that work myself, so I built the barn cheaper than it would have cost. Like the barn we're sitting in now, I didn't build this.
Yeah.
And we hired Bud Carpenter Construction to build the barn. I did the plumbing, but that's the plumbing. It's like a weekend project, It saved thousands of dollars to do it myself, but I didn't do the electrical. My neighbor does the concrete work, so this barn was a little more of a retail price. Mm-hmm. So what I'd say is it's just been putting production first, yield first, lifestyle second. And, I just poured all the money back in for probably basically the first 5 years. All the money the farm made back into the farm. Yeah. So I didn't pay myself. But for the first few years, I had a day job. My wife had a day job the entire time. So that's... And then eventually, when you get to a certain point, and it's longer than people probably want to hear, but it doesn't really flywheel until close to 10 years in my experience. Like, it just seems like you're always like, how am I going to pay that bill? And like running to the bank to deposit like the few checks you got that month, that week. That ebbed in year like 8 to 10, which is longer than people want to hear.
It's a long time.
But just think like, what is farming? Farming is like possibly the most capital intensive business you get into besides like opening a mine. You basically need to buy like a small used car dealership worth of machines. You need land and you need buildings to do it all in. And places like the Intervale show, like you don't need buildings technically. You can do it without buildings. There's so many different ways to do this. You can do it without machines. Yeah. But between high input marketing, labor, machines, buildings, and land, like you need to have a couple of those falling in your pocket. You can't make do without all of them because that's farming. But everybody has a different mix of what their strengths are and what their brains like to focus on. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a terrible marketer. Like that's why I like direct wholesale. Like my marketing is, yes, healthy living, I will get you what you ordered and it will be there tomorrow at the price I told you. You just basically have to be an adult. Say what you got, deliver what you say, and that's like the best marketing you can do. And like the stores appreciate it because you're reliable, and I don't have to like be taking pictures of myself on social media because I'm not good at that. I'm always cognizant too of when we started this farm. I heard from a number of farmers like, I don't know if they said you'll never make it, but the comment was like, the market's so saturated. What are you going to sell? And they were wrong. So like if somebody asked me right now, I'd probably be wrong in what I recommended because, people who are established, which I'd like to think we're established now, like you have big blind spots based on what you're spending your time doing. You miss marketing opportunities because you're not hunting for them. Right. Or you're of the wrong age to understand them. So there's plenty of opportunities in agriculture. You just gotta. You gotta look at what your strengths are. If you're bad at machinery, if you don't know which end of the screwdriver to use, like you probably don't want to get a lot of tractors. Right. Just you're gonna blow your whole budget on fixing things.
Are you a people person? Yeah. Are you a tractor?
But there's so much space for all those different types of people to be successful. And maybe it's not running your own farm. Maybe it's working on a farm where like, God, boy, the people who run that farm are really bad at marketing. I could do that.
Yeah. So maybe the more CSA, customer forward focus.
Yeah. I mean, do you just love like nerding out and making the most beautiful farm stand? Like, there's a place for you. Not here. But like lots of other places would love to have you. So I don't know. I love what I do. You know, it's never am I thinking, I'm going to go. I'd never fill in the blank of what would I do next if I weren't doing this, because I don't know. For me, it works perfectly. It fits my personality, and also like I run the business. If I want to do more machinery work, I just do it. Like at this point, like my coworkers are like better than I am at harvesting stuff.
Right.
So like, I mostly do sales, general management, most of the mechanic work, and like buying stuff. I just buy stuff all the time. It's just, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to run a farm our size. You almost get too good to be like, yeah, it's only $1,200. Sure. Order it. You're like, that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of need that thing now. We're out of tomato trays.
Ka-chunk.
This is like a good problem to have. Like, we're out of tomato trays. That means the 130 trays we have are full of tomatoes. Okay. So,
you just got to do it.
It's so cliche to say you got to spend money to make money, but you do.
It's a high cash flow business.
Yeah.
A lot of money coming and going.
Yeah, you just got to have slightly more coming than going. Hopefully not slightly more, but more money coming than going. And I think it's easy in this business to like sweat the small stuff or ignore the small stuff, and you have to be somewhere in between. Because for me, the most expensive thing I can do is like forget to take care of a crop at a critical stage of its growth. So if I'm too busy like micromanaging people here about like, you got to use your left hand more when you're cutting, like stop it. People are going to be different speeds at things. Like if you're micromanaging people instead of realizing, oh, you just had leafhoppers blowing on potatoes, you might have just lost 10,000 pounds of yield. And that person is wasting 30 cents a week harvesting that thing slower than you want them to do. Like, leave them alone.
All right.
And you're annoying them. So, I work with a bunch of adults who work hard and want to do a good job. We all mess up sometimes, but like if somebody's messing up because they just messed up, it's just what happens. It's humans doing human things all day.
You said you have like a key crew of 7 people or so. Are they coming back year after year?
So we've been at 6 people a year until this year. We went up to 7, and we usually have like 4, maybe 5 of those folks return. So we'd only hire 1 or 2 new people a year. And sometimes those people would jump into the returning mix, and sometimes they'd stay 1 year and leave. But it's crucial because then like training happens sort of organically. Like you just make sure like the first day of broccoli harvest, like 2 new people don't go out alone. But
big accidents
Hannah's our manager here, and she just like does a good job of like pairing people up and like helping people. Like, I noticed you're doing this. You might want to consider. But the most important thing is to have people who want to do a good job. Like, there's easier ways to just like earn a generic paycheck than farming. So, if you're treating people like robots, they're just gonna do a bad job or quit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Unless they're one of that like 1% of people who is motivated by being yelled at, but that's a really rare trait.
Yeah, I don't think that's a common.
Yeah, it's not. But sadly, especially when I was younger, I just remember seeing like farmers yell at their crew a lot. And just, what are you doing? It's not good for anybody. Nobody's blood pressure is benefited by that. And I have kids, so even kids don't like being yelled at.
No.
It's a human thing. So we don't advertise typically for employees. So anybody who like applies here, like kind of by default wants to be farming. So I find hiring to be challenging because you never know how people are going to click with the rest of the crew and how are they going to handle the adversity of August weather or like day 11 of squash harvest. But it's amazing once people step up, especially if you like let them get there.
What fulfills you the most in this career?
Being able to use so many different, hopefully, skills in a given day to achieve an end. Sometimes I'm sitting at my desk for 4 hours in the morning, and then yesterday we had a tractor split in the shop, and we got that put back together. Like, I don't like wrenching on tractors because what wrenching on a tractor means to me is something's broken. But like I hate having broken stuff, so you wrench on the tractor to get it unbroken. And like just the satisfaction of tightening that final bolt on that one hydraulic line as you put the tractor back together, and you're like, now this tractor, and then turning it on.
Get it out there.
And the tractor runs, and Ross backs out of the shop, and he gives the okay sign. You're like, all right. This is like, it's just lots of little victories. And then the seasonality is very satisfying too. Not that we're ever out of season, but just today is different from November 1st, which is different from February 1st.
Yeah.
Different from May 1st. There's always something to look forward to. And therefore, any time of year which you might not love as much will be over soon.
That's true.
Just don't drop the ball.
Next week's going to be pretty close to this week, but
Right.
3 weeks ago was completely different time of
Exactly.
year. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm just really good at adapting to my reality, you know? What do you love about it? I love it because you have to. Otherwise, the option is like, sell it and
Be depressed
go work
and
in
move on,
finance or something. You're like, that doesn't sound attractive to me, so. I don't know, I love walking through a field. I love just like eating the food out of the ground. I love operating machinery. I love building things. I love designing things. I love tweaking systems. I even like bookkeeping, the extent to which I have to do it. Because that's where like, you know, you get to see where you're lying to yourself. You say, or like, I love growing cauliflower. And you're like, wow, we sold that much cauliflower? Oops. That's kind of, like, cauliflower's not a loser, but it's barely a winner for us.
What's one of your, we'll say, weaknesses that you delegate to somebody else? Like some might do bookkeeping or, you know, crew management or whatever.
Especially as I get older, I find my presence around the crew is not beneficial. You know, I don't think I'm disliked, but I think scarcity breeds fondness, perhaps. So, you know, Hannah, who's our manager, she basically like tells everyone what to do all day. And she's a tremendous people person and knows farming. She's been doing this for 10 years, and she's been with us for her sixth or seventh, 17, 18, 19, 20,
Nice.
6th year. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm particularly great at telling people how to do things. I don't know if I'm bad at it, but it's not something I specifically enjoy. And
Yeah.
so like crew management, but also that's just the reality of a lot of that's like the same stuff day in and day out. And my job is to put out fires, sell stuff, fix stuff, which is a type of fire.
Yeah.
But you know, that's how you get so far behind. If you say, all right, Justin, you got 10 hours to like, you're going to harvest these 3 crops, you're going to wash these, box these. So what happens then if you had that budgeted in and then the clutch goes out on the tractor that day? You either can't pivot to attach the problem, or you have to stay up until 3 in the morning. And like I said, I have a family, so I'm trying to avoid that.
Right, and trying to, you know, get the boxes and rubber bands together versus getting that tractor going again, or
Exactly. It's something like
I can
people can be trained to do that stuff better than they can be trained to be diesel mechanics.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I take it. And if I had somebody on the crew who was really into mechanical work, like I'd have them help me with it or do it. You know, it's one guy, Ross, works with me, like he's pretty good at fixing stuff. So he'll do a lot of stuff on the cars and trucks. And he helps me in the shop with stuff like splitting that tractor the other day.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not that good at that stuff either. I just don't have any options. You know? I'm not going to bring it to the dealer to split a dry clutch tractor. I mean, it's not that hard. It's just, that's actually a bad example because we put a new clutch in that 7 years ago. So that one's been done. But I also just try not to own machinery that's so old that it is constantly in the shop because our stuff has to run.
Fair enough.
We have some redundancy built in. But I like to say I like to buy tractors and trucks in the middle third of their lives.
So you buy them used, but not worn down.
Yeah, the best is to buy a tractor from usually a guy who bought the tractor when he retired to plow his driveway and put like 200 hours on it in 8 years. And then decides they want a smaller one. Those are the best because they're usually well maintained. They're inside all the time. They're not overworked. So that's happened a couple times.
Yeah, that'd be a good find.
But you have to be ready to buy it when they're for sale. You know, it's not like, oh, the tractor's broken. What am I going to replace it with now? Because that's a good way to spend tens of thousands of dollars more than warranted for a new machine. So, I mean, that's what I do at lunch. Like I'm eating my lunch on my computer, like looking at Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and Tractor House. And if once a year you find something that saves you $10,000, it's a pretty productive lunch.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. We bought one new tractor ever, but the rest have all been generally lightly-ish used.
Yeah.
And the only one that we bought that was more heavily used, you know, like broken hour meter, that's the only one that we ever have to split. It's like, oh, that's what 6,000 hours on a utility tractor does. Wears out. You know, as a vegetable farmer, we're pretty easy on tractors. Like we put 250, 300 hours a year on a couple different tractors, and The transplanting tractor is literally like just kind of like idling through the field at 1,200 RPM.
Right,
Like,
it's not heavy work.
Your biggest concern there is making sure you're like getting enough oil to the top of the engine.
Rev it up at the end
Yeah,
of the
like
row.
just make sure you go up to 1,500 every couple minutes. And I guess our loader tractors, but it's not like we're turning manure piles every day. It's, our loader tractors get used for pallet fork work and for taking out the compost. Again, pretty easy work. And then a lot of our hours are roading.
That's true.
You're driving down the road at 24 miles an hour. So our stuff tends to last decently because I try to buy it with relatively low hours. And then it takes a long time to get high hour.
Yeah.
300 hours a year. Like our new Massey, we put 400 hours on in the first year. So I'm like, this one's under warranty. Let's get as many hours of this as possible.
Get all the kinks worked out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so far we had like one hydraulic hose bad. And that was a 3.5 minute repair once they sent me a new hose. I was like, okay.
Can handle that.
Fantastic. And that's still under warranty for another 1.5 years. So
Perfect.
hopefully I don't need it, but at least it's there. But we bought that one new because, last like a winter and a half ago, the used market was really high. And got a good deal from a dealer up in Quebec that's worked with a couple of Vermont growers, and they seem to want to sell a tractor.
What are you excited about in your next year of farming life?
Seeing if this experiment with just not growing a whole lot more stuff, but just trying to do better at it, works out financially at the end.
That seems like a 10-year plan, not a 1-year plan, no?
Well, it's every year. We haven't built a new barn in a number of years. We're not going to upgrade any equipment for maybe upgrade this or that. Again, if a good deal comes along, but no plans.
Yeah, no major
like, I'm going to buy a
infrastructure.
carrot harvester. Nothing like that. We got the potato harvester a year ago, and that was eye-opening. We took down a greenhouse here last spring, and we're rebuilding it up the road on an old silage pad, so like a 75-year-old concrete pad, not good for anything except for as a shed floor. So we're building a greenhouse over a shed, or we're building a greenhouse over a concrete pad as just a storage shed.
For a shed, yeah.
Just to have more enclosed covered space, because like that potato harvester is sitting out in the sun and the rain right now, and I prefer that not to be the case.
Drying and rusting and
Belt cracking.
Yeah.
I mean, you replace one of those belted chains, it's $3,000 probably. I don't know.
and quite the project.
Yeah,
They're not made
easy and expensive, and yeah, I don't think that'll be that problem right yet. But
What did you envision your farm would look like when you got started?
my farming experience when I first started was on like a 30-acre CSA farm, so it was very mechanized, very good systems, very good weed control. It wasn't one of these weed whack the pigweed down so we can get to the pumpkins. It was very dialed in, and so I just wanted to have a farm that was mechanized enough that I knew it would take a lot of the back-breaking work out of it, which it does. Like the materials handling, there's no reason to be carrying heavy things all the time. You have to do it no matter what.
There's tools for that.
Yes, there are tractors with pallet forks. Use them, Don't carry a 60-pound leg of cabbage 50 feet out of a field. Carry one head of cabbage 8 inches and drop it in a bin. So I had a very good template sent in front of me from Jean-Paul and Jody at Roxbury Farm. So not that I was copying what they did, but the system seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And one of the most important things in any business is like knowing what things can look like and how to get them there. So I worked there for 4 years and just saw they did it. And so even though our business is totally different from theirs, the systems aren't that different. It's think about stuff and use hydraulics when possible. People get really, especially right now, they're very bent out of shape about like diesel use. I'm like, we burn more gas in the delivery truck than we do diesel in the tractors. That number might actually be more equal now. It used to be way more. We're getting more efficient on our trucking. Like the truck has more stuff in it every day.
Yeah.
And we're still just running one truck 3 days a week. And the tractors were growing twice as much as 5 years ago. So the fuel use is fairly linear per acre.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like, if you'd asked me, my first year plowing up soil was 2009, like, is this what things would look like? I'd be like, I don't know. I don't think I allowed myself to go like where I want it to be. I knew what direction things wanted to go. And then I said to myself, you have to be able to sell the stuff in order to grow the stuff. So what I was able to sell kind of led me where we were able to grow. So the winter storage crops back in that 2010, 11, 12, 13 period was like a huge growth area around here. It probably still is. I don't know. But it always seemed, and also I worked full time elsewhere, so I didn't have time in the summer to go to a farmer's market or even do deliveries.
Right.
So I grew like, half acre of sweet potatoes, a half acre of squash, a quarter acre of onions, and just stuck it in storage, like in my basement. I built a little my mom built a little walk-in cooler in the basement of our old barn, like an 8x8. My mother's a carpenter, so it was handy.
Oh.
So I didn't know exactly where it was going, but I knew like, that sells, that's worth growing, we're gonna do that, and then we do a little more.
Wholesale and equipment was like your vision from the start.
Quantity of product, and if we could go to a farmer's market and sell $8,000 worth of stuff, like sure, we'll do it. But I think I always had a little bit of like hesitation to do the hustle of like do 4 small farmers markets, because I just know there's so much work in that. Mm-hmm. And we did the Burlington Winter Farmers Market for a number of years, and it just never sold enough revenue. And, maybe other folks make it work, but then, a lot of those winter markets have a lot of turnover, and I think some of them might just be too big for their client base, like too many vendors, or whatever it is. Or people are like, why would I go to the farmers market? City Market's right there, and it's also indoors. So people buy food at supermarkets. So we've always said, like, let's sell to the supermarkets.
Yep.
And in this area, we're super lucky to have not just like one good co-op, like I have like 5 different large stores that buy local organic produce and sell a lot of it. Like that's huge. Mm-hmm. And that's not something most people have.
That's true.
Between like City Market, Healthy Living, Middlebury Co-op, and then a place like the Intervale Food Hub and Farmers Too, who buy a large chunk once a week. I mean, they're fantastic outlets because it's so much more efficient to pack 30 cases of something than 30 cases each of one different crop.
Right.
Or one case each of 30 different crops, rather. When we sell to Deep Root, like we'll pack 100 cases of butternut, and it's like, wow, that is so much faster than even packing 20 cases of butternut. Your elbows get a little sore by the end of it, but trying to have anybody do that. So I guess to sum that up, I didn't have an exact roadmap. I just knew how to follow the road signs. If you sell everything at the price you want, grow more of it. Don't grow 3 times as much. And if something doesn't sell, you can't grow it, or you have to figure it out or drop it.
Yeah.
And if a market doesn't work out, you have to drop it. We've never dropped a customer, like that restaurant never pays its bills. Like we've had such good luck with everyone who buys stuff. So on that end, I think we've had it really easy without even knowing it. Other people are like, I was selling to this fly-by-night health food store that closed down, and they had $8,000 in outstanding invoices. I guess I'm never going to see that. I've just never had that happen. Yeah, I think if I added up all my unpaid invoices in 12 years, it'd be like $800, which
nice.
Yeah, and most of those are like $30 each.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that much. I don't even know. Nothing. People pay their bills, which is great. I don't know if that's a Vermont thing or what.
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't look too much into it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all those Vermonters listening to this podcast.
Yeah, you don't have to hunt people down.
Paying your bills. Yeah. We sell to a bunch of restaurants and caterers, and they're all just great.
Good.
And they want to use our stuff. I'm not a salesman, you see, so I don't go out there and like glad hand. I don't walk into the back of a restaurant and convince people to buy our stuff. I don't have that gene. It would come across as disingenuous, I think, if I tried it.
There's a certain level of authenticity in the Northeast, I think.
Yeah. But there's even honesty. I worked for Eric Rosendahl for years, and he was so good at walking up to he could sell anything to anybody. He was so good at it. And I just watched him and I'm like, how do you do that? Because he's not lying either. It's like, wow. He just loved people, so.
Certain level of charisma. Some people just scary.
Absolutely. My charisma is just like having the stuff on the invoice that's supposed to be in the truck.
Follow through.
Responding to emails. Sorry to all those people whose emails I don't respond to.
It's tricky. Where do you get your business or farming education? Like how did you learn this stuff? Did you have a mentor or anything like that? Or
farming education, like I referenced this a bit earlier, but working at Roxbury Farm in the Hudson Valley, it was entirely CSA with like a little local farmers market on Saturdays, which was for community relations more than anything else, just like let people know we're here. So that was probably like 1% of their business, or just a very small amount. The rest was 1,000 plus member CSA in the Albany and New York City areas. So it's a very different business to run, but you still have to plan out crops, plant them, weed them, fertilize them, water them, harvest them. You still have to do all the things. It's just how you get there is different. So as far as business sense, it'd be, well, as far as farming sense go, it'd be, working for Jean-Paul and Jody down there, who were, I wonder if it would have been better for me to have worked on a kind of like a disaster farm first, just so I could have appreciated how well it was run at the time. Because it's like getting dropped into a very well-oiled machine. You think like, oh, all machines automatically oil themselves. No, it's applied. But I don't spend too much time thinking about that because it seems to have worked out okay. Business sense, I don't know. I think there's some hard lessons, but a lot of business is just like basic math and then basic principles. I don't try to do my own taxes. QuickBooks is really helpful in doing your business because like being good at business is often just making sure you're not spending more than you make. And if you are, make sure you get a loan. I just ask people business questions a lot. My father ran a small business. It was more in services than it was in production. Baby steps, I guess. I definitely have farmer friends who are much savvier business people than I am, but I don't think I'm a slouch. Some people are just like so good at sniffing out like that extra sale or this opportunity, and I'm fairly conservative by nature when it comes to. I'm like, I'm going to grow 2 acres of sugar snap peas next year. It just doesn't happen. Like, well, baby stuff, try it, and if it doesn't work, we don't grow it. But I like to think I have a decent idea of what the market can take, which makes you look smarter than you are, because you don't have to like hustle to get rid of stuff. Nothing makes you feel dumber as a farmer. It's like, oops, how am I going to move that 500 pounds of cauliflower I harvested yesterday? Oops. Because with perishable stuff, you have to let buyers know a week in advance that it's coming so they don't order it from California, because, that's a pipeline.
Right. And
they have to stop the pipeline if they're going to take your stuff. So I feel like a lot, in this type of business, a lot of business sense is just like common courtesy and following through on what you say. And that gets you really far. And not bullshitting people.
Yeah.
Like if you say, we got some really nice melons coming this week, don't send crappy melons. Like, if you say it's really nice, make sure it's really nice. And everything should always be really nice. But like if you use that modifier, make sure you're. So I don't think there's too much magic to it.
Yeah.
And being realistic about what stuff costs. Like I remember always asking, at Roxbury at Astro how much things cost, and it blew my mind. And this is back, 20 years ago, so everything's cheap. Like how the? I remember making a crop budget, before we bought this farm, and I think I found it a couple years ago. It was just hilarious. Like I was so wrong. But at least I knew like ballpark. I wasn't off by a factor of 10.
Yeah, right.
Every now and then somebody will see like a machine, like, what's that cost? Like $2,000. I'm like, $80,000. Like, what? You can just watch minds being blown.
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind too sometimes. Yeah. I didn't pay that, by the way. That's just what it would cost if you bought it new.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's an $80,000 tractor. I got it for $50,000, but
yes, like replacement cost, post-COVID inflated replacement cost.
Well, then what's a time that you felt really challenged by farming?
Whenever we have those Junes where it rains 14 inches, because it's just you don't get a do-over in these crops. Like if you're doing 35 successions of baby spinach, you get 34 do-overs.
Yeah.
Worst case, you might lose 3 successions. So worst case scenario is like 10% loss from anyone. But our fields mostly don't flood from the river, but if you get 7 inches of rain in a week, they flood from the air. And then, your fungal diseases take off, so you have to go in and like spray all these preventative, biological fungicides, and so you compact the wheel tracks, which makes the water stand longer, which raises the humidity, which increases diseases, which makes you just get in these bad positive feedback loops, which are fairly demoralizing. But it's been a couple years since we had one of those. But all of our worst years financially have been the years where it rained 10 inches or more in June, which has been 3 of them. It was until 2 years ago last year we had a pattern where like even numbered years were pretty good, and odd numbered years always had one month where we got too much rain, usually May or June.
Yeah.
And the June ones were disasters. May we could somehow get through better. But yeah, those weather events, because knowing you don't get to redo it, you have to look at that browning stand of crop for the rest of its. You have to limp it along, harvest a half yield, sell a half yield,
Follow through with
and
what
wait
you
till
can.
next year. And that, I don't know if it makes you very zen or if it just makes you resigned or what, but those are never the best moments.
Knocks the wind out of you.
Yeah. And then of course you do like break something because you did something stupid. It's never great, but that's not like existential. It's just, that's annoying. Like raising something up and cracking the rear window of the tractor. Oh, I have better use for the $275 than a new window, but that's what I'll spend it on. And then spend 2 hours installing it. Okay.
Stupid mistake.
Yeah, just stupid mistakes, but you learn from them hopefully.
Slow down, not rush.
Yeah, exactly.
What advice would you give your beginning farmer self now that you've been in this close to 20 years? Not even 20 years.
Beginning farmer self. Well, I think when I was younger, I did it pretty well. I think I worked for other people for a number of years. I didn't jump the gun because there's been plenty of people who've started farms without much experience and did great. But I think the number who failed is much larger because it's a pretty unforgiving business.
You don't hear about them because they're gone.
Exactly, or they're the ones like, there's a guy who ran for governor a couple of years ago, and he was like slamming the local food industry. He's James Ellers, and he's like, you need to have a trust fund to grow organic vegetables. And I'm like, just because you did it and it didn't work out, like, don't be a jerk. It was such a jerky comment. And there are so many people who work their asses off doing this, and to have him just dismiss everybody like that out of hand because he saw somebody with a trust fund who he thought had it easier. Like, I don't know anybody who succeeds in this business because of a trust fund. If they have one, good. They'll be handy. Good. But if you're doing, the money can actually make you worse at this. Because you can start off, I can spend $1 million starting a farm pretty easily.
That doesn't mean you're going to be successful at it.
And you might have bought all the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, I want to buy the right stuff. You're like, the wrong stuff I bought lost value. Money makes it easier, but it doesn't make you succeed. It just smooths over some bumps. And just even in my life with my wife working on a farm with a good job, that has been huge. And that's a form of, is that a trust? It's outside money, but it's not paying for the farm. It's just allowed me to be able to focus more on the farm and not have to work maybe 100 hours a week. You know what I mean? It's
taking some.
And I don't apologize for that because this is our situation and we've made the best of it. I try to pay my folks well and not complain about money because nobody wants to hear anybody complain about money. There's times where it's hard, but it's my job to smooth those out. Anyway, to get back to your original question, if I would have liked to have taken a proper year's diesel mechanics course to do, because everything I do in the shop is self-taught.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you're better at teaching yourself than others. I'm the type of mechanic, lots of farmers this way. You learn how the equipment works and you have it broken open. You're like, oh, that's where that shift fork goes. So you learn after the fact, which probably a lot of mechanics do this, but when you talk to a real mechanic who understands empirically how these things work, it's mind-blowing. Wow, if I could just import that knowledge, my life would be a lot easier. So back in my more experiential 20s, that probably would have been a good idea. But I worked for other people for a number of years, and I didn't bite off more than I could chew. When we bought this place, it seemed so huge. If you buy land, mind where it is, and there's a lot of good things about where we are, but it's also a tight valley without a lot of land. So expansion possibilities are not as rich as they could be elsewhere. I think I have a habit of just turning that around into looking at the positive of, oh, it's great. We have to travel 6 miles to get to a field, so our potato beetles don't fly that far. Great. And that is good. But if I had 30 more acres, it would be handy. But I'm not going to go out and try to poach land from the dairy farm neighbors. They need to make a living too. And they're really good at what they do, so I'm not going to start doing that.
Right.
So all the land we've gotten has basically been either a neighbor offered up a 2-acre field or knocking on some doors. And then one neighbor passed away a couple years ago and we bought his place. That was a challenging year or two. Buying a farm that wasn't in current use, so paying full property taxes and the mortgage on a field you couldn't crop for 2 more years.
So you didn't use it?
Couldn't. It had a passive urea on it. So we couldn't crop it for organic crops. But even that has benefits, because then you can break the sod one year, cover crop it the next, and then plant it the third. And like, if anybody's ever plowed a sod and planted into it that year, especially organically, knows the hazards.
Can you grow a field not organic, or do you have to be 100%?
We could have had a split farm.
Okay,
But
so
I just didn't want to deal with it. I just didn't. Just wasn't. Yeah, I could have grown conventional sweet corn organically.
Right.
And if that was the only option, we could have done that. I could have told the stores, like, this is transitional ground, it's grown organically, but it's not certified organic. And they would have paid conventional prices, which maybe would have been better than nothing. Right. But I don't know.
But yeah.
We didn't have to, we didn't need it yet, whereas if we lost that, well, we own that field now, but. That's what we had a little more, we've always had a little more land in rotation than we have in production, and that we've never lost a field to anybody yet, knock on HDPE.
Yeah, you've never needed to.
But having that buffer to absorb losing something would be huge.
Gives you an opportunity to cover crop it, to test it, to work with it, learn it.
Yeah, and these 30, 40-year-old acid sods can be pretty tough things. Like if you actually plowed one of these fields, even around here, if you plow it 8 inches deep, you come back next year, like the sod is still there, 8 inches deep. So we try to like chop it up with a disc and then plow it, or even the last field we brought into rotation, I just used the high-speed disc harrow on it and disced it probably 6 times.
Jeez.
Well, that way you wouldn't have that like pickled layer down below. Well, even if we'd plowed, it would have been moldboard plowed and then use a conventional tandem disc harrow twice or 3 times, then field cultivated it twice. It's a similar number of passes.
Yeah, I guess so.
The high-speed discs are very handy because we have our set to only work about 3-4 inches deep, so you can keep everything high up in the soil.
Top.
Ish.
Yeah.
And we still use the moldboard plow, we still chisel plow, we still use a field cultivator and a tandem disc, so we've never bought a piece of tillage equipment that replaced another one. They just add
another tool in the box.
It's like being a timber framer. Like, oh, how many chisels do you have? 70? Like, this one's only used for this. It's tillage tools for an organic farmer. It's an obscure reference. It's like chisels for a timber framer. The nice thing about them is the roller on the back carries the weight of the disc. So discs have a reputation for causing compaction because theoretically, all the weight is in the soil. So either on the bottom of the disc or resting on the bottom tangent of the concavity of the disc. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps the disc from sinking all the way in. Like in our soil, it's actually the rocks that it hits. Yeah. So I think we get less compaction than they would in a wet silt loam.
Yeah.
But with the high-speed discs, there's a roller in the back that's set 3 inches above the disc. So when the disc penetrates, it's actually riding on this roller, which is on top of the soil. So that's actually providing your depth control. And we did some penetrometer readings last summer, and I couldn't find a plow pan in any of the fields that had like multiple passes with that. So I'll keep doing that. I mean, 1 year's tests after you've been using a tool for 1.5 years is not conclusive, but it's not
right.
It's like driving a wet grain buggy through a field during harvest with 100,000 pounds of corn in it on one axle. It's not causing that level of compaction. And also a lot of the concerns about compaction, I think, on our scale are kind of overblown because people hear about soil compaction, which is not nothing. But the machinery used on vegetable farms in the Northeast is so small.
Right.
They're light machines. Like even a 10,000-pound tractor is a light tractor. If you've got it on pizza cutter, veg tires, you can start getting there. But you start looking at your flat plate area for a certain tire size and dividing out the weight of the tractor by we're at 6 PSI. Not bad, assuming your tires are inflated correctly. But we use all radials and all the tractors, and they're not as low pressure as Michelin tells you to run them, because Michelin really wants you to buy new tires when your sidewalls blow out. But we're higher than they recommend.
Little marketing there.
Well, you do get better traction, but
at a cost.
Your cost per acre doubles.
It's time for our special segment, What's in Your Pocket?
I've got a multi-tool on my belt. I've got a quick knife, an Inkzol. Usually that's a pen, not a Sharpie. I don't know why I have a Sharpie too. Phone, a nut driver.
Is that always on you?
There's often some sort of impact fitting in a pocket. I got a microphone.
Oh, there you go.
And
That's a good one
then
today.
we put the microphone in my trash pocket. So there's trash in that pocket too.
That's all right. That's nice.
And a house key. So this is the potato room in the wintertime. So this is passively cooled down to 37 all winter. And then in the summertime, we pack tomatoes in here. So we have intake and exhaust fans that if it's below a set point outside, the fans kick on. If it's above a set point inside and below a set point outside, they kick on and cool it off. So we try to keep it, I think I have it set at 54 in here, which this time of year is pretty impossible to keep it below 60.
Yeah.
Because although last night was 49.
Yeah.
It was 60 in here this morning.
Nice.
That way we can come in and pick tomatoes, and ahead of an 80-degree weekend, we can pick them, more orange, and they kind of arrest in here instead of over-ripening over the weekend. So this room becomes just box storage and tomato packing. And the nice thing about this room, Andy, is it's more or less rodent-proof.
Yeah.
The only way rodents get in here is if they come in a bin, which does happen every now and then. So we can store cover crop seed in here. Andy, to follow up on your question that I got off on about what would you tell your young self to do? Build everything taller. This barn is 21-foot ceilings, and that's perfect. I'm not going to go higher than that with anything. But we built a barn up there in 2011, and I have 9-foot ceilings. Why? They're like, well, the garage we're building it behind is 9 foot. Like, what an arbitrary thing to try to meet. It's actually harder to build an addition at the same height. Like, if you go up above, you don't have to match roof.
Yeah.
It was just silly. It would have cost almost no extra money. It would have doubled the storage. I mean, things like that. And that's because I didn't ask enough questions of other people who'd built things. Because everybody says build it bigger.
Yeah.
But you're like, I only have $40,000 to spend. And build it taller. It only costs you $2,000.
Right. It doesn't cost that much more to go a little taller.
Same roof, same foundation. You want to see a greenhouses or?
Sure.
One thing we do have, we have front hitches on 3 out of 5 tractors.
That'd be fun.
All the non-loader tractors have front hitches. I'm a huge proponent of front hitches.
Did you add those or buy this tractor with
I've added them all.
Yeah.
That was close to $5,000.
This right here is what we wish we had for putting hay wagons in the barn.
You could make that up, you know it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things we keep talking about, and then
No, it's actually really handy. Like when we brought back the rock picker into the shop up the road, I'll put a drawbar right here and then just lift it up and drive it in.
it's a lot easier.
Super handy. So we use this tractor for cultivating. You can drop weights as needed. Most vegetable farmers don't get that nerdy with ballasting their tractors, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
If you don't have a heavy implement elevated with a 3-point hitch, why do you have 800 pounds hanging off the front? And if you're lifting a 3,500 pound speed disc, you need the weight on the front. So we have weight blocks that we just drive up to, pick them up, and drive away.
with this.
Yeah. So they use the Walter Scheid, hook ends.
Yeah.
Which I think, I like the way the European tractors are spec'd. They drive faster. They have Walter Scheid hooks on the back. Their drawbars are better designed. Our drawbars are they're not even technology. It's just a bar. It's 1580s technology.
Yeah. Steel.
Yeah, just a big bar of steel. Whereas in England they have ways to drop down, pick up wagons from the tractor seat, and it locks in place. So that's an improvement, but it's not the way things have been done here. So it's nice thing about this was the tractor, all M series, even the high crops, come with a loader valve installed. They don't make it as an option. So when I put this on, already had a loader joystick to operate this.
Yeah.
Which has been handy, because otherwise I would have had to run it off an SCV in the back.
Yeah. And
And then you lose an SCV and only have 2 pairs on this tractor, so.
Yeah.
And I run a hydraulic top link off one of them, so you'd use up both of your SCVs. So like when you're running
Oh yeah.
the potato harvester, actually I would take the top link off and run the harvester. But
You got a camera back there too, huh?
Oh yeah, big fan of these magnetic Shoop cameras. You can see up under the rear view mirror.
Yeah. We installed the same one so we can put it on like the bucket loader and see the blade, see what we're scooping.
$278 or whatever. Like, yeah, we have one on one of our the cab loader tractor, on the pallet forks. So
Yeah.
you can, because visibility isn't amazing.
No, it's not a forklift.
It's a good test of skill,
Yeah.
but it's easy to make a mistake, especially on uneven ground, which we're sometimes dealing with.
Well, like we have a monosem corn planter, a 2-row corn planter, but our plantings of corn, he'll plant 4 or 5 times throughout the season, but 4 different varieties each time. So it's only a couple cups of seed.
Right.
So you can't.
A yogurt
It's
container.
only in the bottom of the hopper. So we just put one of these cameras in there so we can see. Okay, we
And
know.
it's one of those from Shoop or like a cab cam.
It was like an RV backup camera, and then Dad bolted a magnet to it and made a little battery pack so we can clip it out anywhere.
We've had good luck with them. The wireless ones I've never used. I just know if it's wireless, it means it needs to have batteries, and
Yeah.
it will run out of batteries.
It is one more
when
thing.
I need them.
Yeah.
We've had one of the cameras go bad, and I keep meaning to send it back to Shoot, but I haven't done it. But I'm sure they'll send me a new one. But it's interesting. Like when we're running potato harvest, I'll put 2 monitors in sometimes, so I can look at 2 different places on the
Oh,
harvester.
that would make sense.
And then like the harvester itself has a good joystick cluster to adjust everything. So it's I feel very I feel like I'm in Illinois. There's no GPS at least, but yeah. So that's that one. I'm also we broadcast all our fertilizer, and just in the world of like electronic tech stuff, we did put in a Trimble Easy Guide 250 GPS unit in the one tractor that we haul the fertilizer spreader with, because organic amendments are quite expensive, and we spread everything calculated based on 30-foot tram lines. So with the GPS, I can actually spread at 30 feet exactly instead of guessing or hopping out all the time and pacing out 30 feet. So that's been useful. You can see that one up there. So this one,
Your GPS or the camera? What are you talking about?
so those are handy. It's only useful if you're spreading quite a bit of, $1,400 a ton potassium sulfate. But, so we've got cameras now in 3 of the tractors, just because it's so useful to be able to see what's going on.
Well, then once you have it in one, then you go to use a different tractor. It's
Exactly.
like, I wish I had the camera.
Yeah, so we have 3 cab tractors, and they all have cameras now. Radios.
Yeah.
And so this one has a front 3-point hitch too, with a rock box. It's so handy to be able to do whatever you want. We can put a weight on the front. We can put a rock box on the front. We can put pallet forks on the front.
Oh, that would be kind of
When we're
nice.
transplanting, we'll put pallet forks on that deer that Hannah just drove away in.
Yep.
Put a big pallet on it and just load 20 extra trays on there. If you don't need it, if you don't need it for weights. Also, front hitches are by far the best way to plow snow because they float. You can have each of these arms float independently of each other, mechanically and hydraulically. So if you're plowing, we use a snow pusher, and if you're pushing over uneven terrain, the pusher just rocks up and down instead of torquing your loader frame, which is how a lot of people plow snow. I mean, maybe if you have a perfectly flat lot, it doesn't matter. But I just remember when we used to plow with a blade on our loader, just like the stress of wanting to plow close to the ground, but not wanting to tweak that loader frame. Even though there were springs and stuff, it makes plowing snow recreational as opposed to a stressful. First of all, having a cab and a front 3-point hitch.
I see you skimped on your greenhouses.
Totally skimped. Yes, Andy's referencing the Harnois, which are not the cheapest greenhouses, but they're so well built. They take twice as long to build and cost a little bit more, but when we priced these out, it actually was marginally more than a Rimmel. And no offense to Rimmel, but this is a bit more greenhouse for the dollar.
Yeah, people who put up Harnois don't seem to regret them.
Their end wall doors are not great. They're not awful, but Harnois, I know you're listening to this. Come on, guys. I know you can design a door that doesn't hang up as much. It wouldn't take too much. Apparently more than I can do, though. But they're such strong.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about
They're
snow.
complicated. They take a lot longer to build. They have all these proprietary fasteners that you won't find on the other companies' houses. But they're just, that oval tube is so burly. And they use, very strong inflation blowers. And their whole inflatable sidewall curtain is super nice.
Inflatable sidewall.
So if you look over here, this curtain is inflated. So there's a jumper tube halfway down the greenhouse you can see.
Yeah.
So it steals inflation air from here, pushes it down there, and then in the spring when you're rolling your greenhouse sides up and down, the roll-up tube presses up against this pillow. You get amazing air sealing compared to just having your roll-up side roll down over a 2x12 baseboard. So you can we use a thinner baseboard. That's a cedar 2x6.
I have not seen this before.
Yeah. I think some people who even buy Harnois don't put them up because by the time this comes along, like, boy, this took twice as long as I thought it was going to take. And they don't do it, but it's super useful. Because also, even in the springtime when you roll the sides up, like, you don't want the wind right on the plants anyway.
Right.
So this is above the young plants, so it's venting the hot air,
Yeah,
which is what you're supposed to be doing, and keeps the wind off.
Yep.
It's a very good design. So we've
Or
actually
the cool evening air, it kind of stops that from just barging
exactly.
in.
But just imagine when this rolls down,
Yeah, no,
it
creates
seals
a tight
so
seal.
nicely.
That's smart.
So we even put, we have a Rimmel house over there that we retrofitted it with this style when we put on new baseboards last year. But everything seems very well engineered on these, and a lot of it's proprietary parts. A lot of other greenhouse companies all use the same fittings from, that one company that makes all the greenhouse strapping. And I don't know, the salesman at Harnois is super helpful. Gets right back. I mean, it's just a very professional organization, and they're 2 hours north of here. And they obviously know how to deal with snow load.
Right.
So the house isn't very beautiful because we just picked it for orders today, but we moved like 55 flats out of here this week. So it's a pretty good week. It's kind of our first week of like summer is here in full force. It's not going to get here. We're on.
Here we are. Go time.
Yep.
So you have tomatoes in all three?
Yeah, so here, you want to walk out, I'll show you. We got cukes kind of on their way out in that house above us.
Sure.
And we've got those hybrid heirlooms in here as an experiment, mostly for our summer CSA because people say they want the heirloom, so we'll see. But we were out in pruning this morning, so we'll clean this up this afternoon. This house was just built last spring, so I haven't run power to it yet. So we're technically inflating it with an extension cord. So I've been reluctant to hang fans. I should just hang fans. But when you're giving yourself an excuse to not do something, that's the excuse I've given myself. It's not motors, it's just fan motors.
Yeah, right.
So this is a 2.5 meter Farmet high-speed disc, which is super handy, super heavy, but it's a great way to incorporate things that are too stringy for a plow, but perhaps too hard or tough for a regular disc, which just doesn't quite have the down pressure. And normal discs are only offset on one plane, but these discs are offset like this. So they actually have suction on them, so they want to suck into the ground. And then the roller on the back provides your depth gauge. So we run this 3 out of 8 depth, which is about 3.5, 4 inches for the most part. Yeah. The softer the ground, it'll go a little bit deeper in soft ground because obviously that roller will compress soft soil more. But You can tear up sod with it. It doesn't like do it in one pass. But you slowly kill it all. Because
It'll get there.
if you get down, I think below 3 inches, you get 100% undercutting, I believe, based on the spacing.
Oh.
But on sod, you're often not getting 3 inches down, so you do have gaps. You have to just get a couple different angles. But I really feel like the best way to deal with sod, if you were actually bringing sod into production, is to get a heavy-duty rototiller. I mean, we usually just use a moldboard plow,
pulverize it.
but like especially if it's an old sod, just like because you literally need to like mechanically chop up the sod, and if you plow it, you all of a sudden just put it 8 inches down. We don't have a heavy-duty rototiller, but if I was at an auction and one were to sell cheap, I would buy it. Like I said, we do all our cultivation not with mid-mounts, but with front 3-point hitches. So here's a Tillmore basket weeder set up to be run on a front hitch, and it works great. From a turning perspective, it's a little more advantageous to have belly mount. But if your rows are straight and you don't have to compensate much, you can do it off the front just fine.
You set the camera up front to watch that?
I can see this one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I should have a camera set up on that one in case I catch a rock. And that's the biggest risk. I'm not worried about hitting the plants, but like if you get a rock in here and you're plowing for 100 feet because the rock stopped your baskets. But we actually only use this a little bit. We use it for like our one planting of beets and carrots in the fall, and then often once or twice in the spring on young brassicas. But we use the finger weeder a lot more than these on potatoes and corn and brassicas. Brassicas lay down so much when you transplant them that sometimes the basket weeder can rip them up.
Yeah.
Finger weeder does it too, but so I love things with depth wheels, like so these parallelogram linkages on a front hitch that can also float if it hits a big rock.
Yeah.
So with this, I basically set the front 3-point hitch so that the toolbar is at like a medium height, and then let the parallel gangs bounce up and down as needed with these gauge wheels. Because our ground rolls a lot. Like we don't have hills, but we don't have laser flat fields. They're all alluvial floodplains. So moving water deposited that stuff, and it dances as it deposits.
Yep.
So even in our quote flat fields, you can have 3-foot topography, one end to the other, ups and downs. So having things that can follow the contours instead of being cantilevered up when you crest the top of a knoll and smashed into the ground as you, other way around, smashed into the ground as you crest and go down.
Yeah. Yeah. Float is needed in Vermont land.
Float is handy. Super handy. And you can buy 3-point hitch cultivators for so cheap. Like that was a 6-row. So I've cut that down and used it 3 times. And I got it for $100 at an auction. It's like,
is there
4x7 toolbar is worth
right
$900, And I got all the gangs and just cut stuff off and modify it.
Is there much you need to do in order to take a rear-mounted 3-point and turn it into a front?
Just flip it around. One thing you do have to pay attention to, as you can see, I torched off the back side of the gang because your hitch is here, you will hit your front tires.
Oh.
So you sometimes have to have stub outs to push the implement further away from the tractor. And I will admit on our finger weeder, if I raise the hitch all the way up, the front tires will hit some S-tines. So if I lower the hitch, I have to go all the way up and then drop it 2 inches to turn. I should just put some stops on something. But again, I know the hack to get beyond it. So it's one of those things I should fix. But
it's good till somebody else hops in.
It's true. It's true. That's a ditch bank flail that we use for mowing cover crops and ditch banks. We have a lot of, in the humid Northeast, you lose a slight percentage of your field every year to trees growing and brush growing. Yeah. So this allows us to establish a field perimeter and then maintain it.
Yeah, it's a heavy.
Again, one of these things, like I was looking for one for a couple months, and all of a sudden one came up on Facebook Marketplace out in the Finger Lakes, and it's like, Raj, you want to take a drive out to Finger Lakes? Say, absolutely. Goes out there with a box truck, loads up this, comes back with it. That's a rock picker, which is exceptionally useful. Our little piece of mining equipment that we own. It's basically a rough potato digger. I mean, that's a Lockwood from the 70s. Lockwood makes potato harvesters, so it's not too hard for them to make rough potato harvesters.
The rugged model.
Yeah, and it holds about 2 yards of rocks on the back, and it holds way more than I'm comfortable putting in there. But it's just, it feels like you're cheating when you're out picking rocks from a field. You're like creating rock piles, and you're cleaning your fields up.
It must be satisfying.
Oh, it's just great. It's a little stressful to run it because you're always worried about a rock jamming something. But overall, we've picked, I don't even know what the number, around 50 yards of rocks out of there just in 2 years. And we use a lot of rocks for like building roads and filling in low spots on accesses.
Yeah.
And in as wet a climate as we have, it is really beneficial to have like solid road base. And that's,
Yeah.
and if you go out and pick rocks when it's wet enough, like you get a little bit of soil sticking to the rocks, you actually get the fines for your mix, for your roads. But between that and then road ditchings from the town, we can usually make a pretty good road base.
That's good.
It's like we're standing on, I don't know, 2 feet of,
Yeah.
is like probably mostly gravel from the town. Yeah, so we got mulch lifters, bed shapers. This is the finger weeder front cultivator. Again, I can't recommend front hitches enough. Not for everybody, but skinny tires, high crops, and front hitches on certain tractors, because obviously you want fat tires for tillage.
Right.
So we have all of our tractors are on 72-inch tire centers, except for our loader tractors, which are on 68-inch tire centers, so that the outsides of the tires won't go into adjoining rows if you have to drive in to get a crop out with the loader. But that means we can't mark beds out with them, we can't bed shape with them because they're driving on too much of the bed top.
I see.
But we have 2 other tractors that'll do that. Unless one's in the shop getting split.
Yeah.
We've been there for like 2 weeks. I'm just so happy it's out now. So this is a front 3-point hitch to skid steer adapter we made. I've only ever used it on the snow pusher. We don't have any other skid steer equipment, so
Yeah.
it's either that or mount or weld on 3-point hitch. I figured it would be safer to do it this way in case we ever had to sell it.
Yeah.
We made these a couple years ago, which are really useful during storage crop harvest. It's a double pallet fork, so you can put 2 bins on the back. So we'll have one of the loader tractors out during harvest with 2 bins on the back, during squash or onions, and a bin on the front. And then we'll have another loader tractor out. So this one's creeping through the field, loading up, pulls out of the field. The other one pulls in with front and back single forks, fills that one up. This one unloads, loads the wagon.
Yeah.
So you don't have people standing there being like, just waiting for the
tractor
to come back. So we're, much of the year we're super over-equipped with machines, but it allows you to leave things on certain pieces of equipment, and every now and then you need 5 running.
Yeah.
And for us, that's like August and September and October. We're just flat out, all the machines are running. Even if you don't have enough operators, you have 3 operators and 5 machines because you just need all these different things happening.
When it's go time, it's go time.
Exactly. When it's go time, it's go time. Our weather can be really disadvantageous during harvest season. Rollover plow I like a lot.
Yeah,
So you don't have dead furrows in your fields. The spare parts piles.
Yeah.
Stuff you bought for $50 and never used. The subsoiler mostly gets used during sweet potato harvest because we can cut the vines. And the subsoiler just doesn't hurt. So we can cut the vines and go in and mow the vines and lift the plastic and cut the vines off. But this we bought originally after a wet year where we thought we were having a lot of water ponding in the wheel tracks in winter squash. So as a way to rip the wheel tracks kind of at lay-by in late June. Don't use as much for that, but it gets, every now and then we'll move these shanks in ahead of planting carrots. That's a little overkill, but has its uses. Big tine weeder I just bought for pretty cheap. Don't really use it. And then we still do use the regular 10-foot tandem disc harrow for certain things. But nowhere near as much since we got the high-speed disc. With the amount of farms I've seen that don't have a rear pallet fork, blows my mind.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw one of those was at John Satz, and I was like, that is genius.
Yeah, but people they'll harvest 1 bin of melons and drive it out on the front fork. I'm like, guys, they're $280.
Yeah, it's a cheap implement.
Such a cheap thing. Again, I'm probably too good at spending money.
Well,
But
and
that's a no-brainer.
I would think it's pretty easy to pick up pallets with rear forks too, because you can see what you're doing.
So easy.
Because you're not loading a truck. You don't need the lift.
No, you need
Got to
a foot.
shovel it around.
A foot of lift is all you need. So we're at the propagation greenhouse now, and we poured a slab in here last year, which was amazing. Poured a slab in about 2/3 of it so that we could wheel in bins of onions for curing after harvest. Not to mention just concrete is such an amazing surface in general on a farm. So you can use pallet jacks and put your potting soil bins on wheels. And you can fork around everything. It's just great. I'd like to pour a slab in the other end too, but just haven't prioritized it this year. But it was an interesting problem we had last time. We're like, oh, we want to pour a concrete slab in an existing greenhouse. And the concrete truck, it was wet last July, if you don't remember, couldn't get over to the end. And then we had a really easy solution. We just like undid half the greenhouse plastic and like put it up with some sticks.
Roll it up.
Yeah, we just, 5 minutes later, you can see where he poured the concrete.
Yeah,
This is where the chute came in. Can't believe that's still there. So we had a pretty bad garlic crop. So we have garlic curing over here that we just brought in this week, on these racks, which I think I ripped off from a Josh Volk article on Growing for Market 10 years ago. I didn't rip off, he put them in the magazine for us to copy, and I did. They've been really useful. Couple hours with a nail gun and a chop saw. We bought some nice bench tops 3 winters ago to make some nice cedar benches instead of, we had like hog panel ones, which were always kind of a hassle. They weren't free, but should have them for a while. We put in a pellet boiler with help from a grant that Vern did, I don't know, 8-9 years ago in 2014. And that's actually worked really well. I know a lot of folks have had mixed opinions of their Central Boiler Maxim pellet boilers, but I think it's been great. It's been super reliable, saves us a bunch of money on heat, and we used to buy corn from a farmer down in Addison County. He didn't have any this year, so we bought wood pellets, and the wood pellets are actually a little nicer to burn. So I'm a little torn now. But we finally, 2 springs ago, I finally made just like one heat bench.
Yeah.
Just with some leftover PEX tubing. And it does great for like just germinating those early eggplant and tomatoes. We should probably have a couple benches of this, but I think this is tidy.
Just enough to get stuff going, and then you can move it off.
Exactly. But when we put in 3 zones on the manifold. 1 for the main heat, 1 we've used for this, and 1 we still have a spare one, so we should probably do something else. And I didn't even know this was a thing, but apparently houses now get built where the hot water's constantly circulating. I've never lived in a house that had that. So we just use one of those they're expensive little pumps, but they use like 10 watts of electricity or something crazy. So that's what we use for circulating through here, because you don't need to push much gallons per minute for, through 1/2-inch PEX to keep a heat bench warm. And these aren't super commonly used around here, but these PropTech trays, they're nowhere near as bomb-proof as the plastomers that a lot of people bought around here 20 years ago, but you can't buy anymore. They're a rigid tray, but so the cell size is nominally the same as a thermo injection molded 128, but I think it's 22% more space efficient just because the walls are so thin. And you don't have those like curled edges. So in terms of how many plants you can get in a greenhouse, I think the number I came up with was 22% more space with one of these, and you get more soil because it's a deeper tray, which isn't always a good thing, but for things like onions that are in the greenhouse for 2 months in the spring, they run out of juice a lot less with this tray than compared to a 128 style tray. They're, like I said, you can see all the chips on them, so they do. If you're rugged, if you're aggressive with them, they will show you. The biggest downside to them is they don't nest, and they come from California. So how many you can get on a pallet is somewhat limited.
They're a little more of a bulky item, but...
Yeah. I haven't bought any in a couple of years, though, luckily. Yeah, stuff made of plastic is just crazy right now. Mm-hmm. In the last couple of years, we've definitely started using hay wagons more than trucks and, trailers, proper trailers, because it's just so easy to hook up a hay wagon.
Yeah.
And, you can, these are like $3,000 new, which is...
Those are nice wagons.
Yeah, there's a guy over in Ballston Spa, New York, who deals them, and they're probably $4,000 now, but
yeah,
that's just how everything is. They're spec'd nicely, in my opinion. Like, they use used truck tires, I'm sure they're
Right.
medium of middle of the road quality, but like that's all I need.
That's fine, yeah.
But you know, 8-ton running gear, so you can fill that up with you can put 20 bins of potatoes on there. Technically, I probably wouldn't put 20. I think we do 18. Potatoes are kind of heavy once you put them in a bin, though. But we'll fill that up with 20 winter squash bins.
Yeah.
They're lighter.
Yeah, $3,000, that's not bad.
No.
And the spring-assisted tongues?
Spring-assisted extended tongues, you know.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
then you're like, you know, so you don't have to be good at backing up a truck.
Yeah.
You have to be not awful, and that's
Yeah,
it.
you gotta get close.
As long as you're not awful, you can do it. And then I
That's
love
so
these
nice.
Lock-E's. I don't know if you guys use these.
No, I haven't seen those.
Yeah, so instead of having a pin at the bottom, they lock in place. They're like $26 a piece,
Yeah.
but you don't lose them, and you never have your
Your safety pin
your
missing.
hair clip pin pulled out. I don't know about you. I've definitely pulled a disc arrow before when I lost the pin, and all of a sudden, boy, I sure got a lot easier to pull
Yeah.
because you left the harrow back. So we use those on all the pretty much anything that's drawbar driven. We have those Lock-E's pins. Lock-EZ? What are they called? I don't know. Shoop sells them. Agri Supply sells a cheaper version, which aren't nearly as good. And like Shoop is mostly like combine concaves and stuff, but they also have a lot of stuff that's useful
Right,
for
right.
smaller scale farms. Their bread and butter is servicing, you know, grain farms in the
Big
Midwest.
stuff, yeah.
But a lot of the stuff is the same. Yeah, the mechanism, it's pretty ingenious.
Simple.
It's just that plate.
Just that.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be durable.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I just spray some fluid film on them every now and then when I remember
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Sweet.
They last 10 years. Cost me $2, $3 a year to have them.
You would have spent that on clips.
Totally.
Well, and time saving. Like it doesn't take long to drop a pin,
And
but that takes
and if you
even
take
less.
this off, you don't want to put it in there.
Yeah, right.
It's
Get it
there.
out of the way,
Like,
and it's
it
not
doesn't.
gonna roll
it
off
doesn't
into the
disappear. Exactly. So that's like a. I don't know. I consider these like those cameras. Like they're relatively inexpensive and they help you avoid annoying mistakes.
And it's something you're gonna use like every day. You know, you're always hitching it on, hitching it on, hitching.
You know, people don't. You know, people pull pins out and they bust their knuckle. You know, it's just so much
Yeah.
better. Or they lose the pin and don't use it, and then
Yeah.
it bounces out.
Or, yeah,
So we're trying to avoid mostly.
Don't use the pin unless we hit the road, and then it's like, well,
Yeah.
probably should.
So these are both insulated containers. This container we've had for probably 10 years. This one's heated with a cool bot.
Okay.
That one's heated with a compressor. I built an ante-room there, so right the last 3 feet of that container is an insulated wall. So the cool bot dumps there. It's got a warm corner, so you have to exhaust that heat
Yeah.
in the summer. I would have done it differently. It works fine, but you lose 3 feet. So I was trying to avoid. So I knew shipping container doors are awful.
Yeah.
So we built a front wall here with a normal door. So like,
I see. Yeah.
you just
yeah.
walk in and out, right? But we used this until like 3 years ago. This is the only cooler we had because we don't do that much cooling. But with things like sweet corn
Yeah.
and cabbage, you'd need to be able to. So we wanted to increase our cabbage and our sweet corn. So then we
Nice.
hung an evaporator in here with a proper compressor outside, hang some construction string lights, and it's party town.
So what's the cost for one of these? That's
This was $6 for the container delivered. Again, I'm sure it's much more now. This was 2.5 years ago.
But it was just like this, insulated. And
This is exactly what it looked like. That is a false wall in the back that I built. 6 inches though from the real wall.
yeah.
Because this also, the way these containers are designed to work on ships is they have the AC unit on the back and it pushes cold air down along the floor and then returns back up. It's about 8 for the reefer unit installed. Yeah, so about 14. And this, you know, we won't even turn it on until we bring in sweet corn.
Okay.
So this way we can bring sweet corn and melons in the heat of summer. Because before we grew sweet corn, we never were bringing in hundreds of pounds of hot produce. So the cool bot worked fine in there. I mean, people often grossly overestimate what a cool bot can do.
Yeah.
The cool bot is like the world's smallest, a cool bot in an AC unit is like the world's smallest cooler. So if you want to heat like a 2 foot by 2 foot by 8 foot cooler, it'll do a great job. But as soon as you put hot stuff in there,
it doesn't have capacity.
when you look at the the cooling capacity of even a small 4-bank evaporator, it's, I don't know, a lot more.
Yeah.
So with things like sweet corn, you have to get them down to temp quickly. So we can just pick into 20 bushel bins is how we ship stuff like CSA. You roll a 20 bushel bin in here straight from the field. You go through double pallet forks, fill the bins, drop them in here. 8 hours later, they're cool, whereas in a cool bot, it would be 57 degrees in there. And the corn would be 63. So, being able to remove energy is important.
How do you move the bins around in here?
Pallet jack.
Oh, okay. That works on this floor?
Some work better than others. Yeah. But yes.
Selective pallet jacks.
Yeah, I mean, they're designed to be able to do it.
Yeah.
It's that when you twist things around fully is when you can run into problems, especially if you do it slowly. The idea with going with this is like we weren't sure if we needed a lot more cooling capacity than we have here. And if for whatever reason we need more than this, the next step is to like build a cooler.
Yeah.
And then this becomes an expendable, saleable item,
right.
which you could then sell because it's truckable. I mean, that's the idea at least.
Get it up.
Is it going to go anywhere? Probably not.
Yeah. But it could.
But, I guess like my job is to professionally like worry about what can go wrong. So like, why do I build that door over there? Just in case we had to sell the place. Like,
you never know.
Never know with this. And if I built something with a concrete floor and framed it out and it's too small, like, then what?
It's single use. It's a cooler. It's committed. Like, yeah. Versus, like you said, this shop.
And if we needed more than this, we can, we could put a cooler right here, with 16-foot ceilings.
Right.
But I just didn't want to. I'm comfortable with the amount of debt we're carrying right now. I'd like it to get smaller.
Always.
But you need it to get to where you need to be.
I'm Andy Chamberlain, and that was The Farmer's Share. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any free bonus content, or visit thefarmersshare.com to check out more episodes and interviews. This podcast is supported by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association and the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. Thank you for listening.